Thank you for joining us for the 26th episode of the Let's Dream podcast. Today we have another dreamer interview, and today's guest is an anthropology teacher. His name is Mr. W. We always try to maintain anonymity for our guests in the spirit of the internet whenever they request it. And this is a person that I've known for a while, and we've talked about dreams a lot in the past. I decided to bring him on as a guest because I think he's got a lot of interesting points of view, and as an anthropologist he tends to think of things in the grand scheme or the whole picture. So I think our listeners will really enjoy this episode and the point of view that it takes. And without further ado, here is the interview. We have Mr. W. How's it going?
Hi, thanks for having me.
So we can just jump right into the questions. We'll just start off with the basics and then we'll get into some of your dreams. But first and foremost, do you lucid dream?
Sometimes.
Okay, so why do you think we dream?
Geez, that's a really tough question, and I've been wondering that a long time. Geez. Big question. Okay, so like the only thing I can really think of in a nutshell, I guess we'll spend the rest of the podcast kind of like elaborating on this, is the human brain creates mental imagery based off like experience. You know what I mean? Okay. And so dreams are kind of based on that. Actually, they are based on like your experience, your fears, your desires, things that are going on in your life, but they're kind of like painted together in a really convoluted way. Like, I mean, like weird example, like you ate a ham sandwich the other day and then, the day before you were at a water park. Now suddenly you're having a dream about going down the slide at the water park on a ham sandwich. You know what I mean? Okay. Maybe the feelings of each actual experience were similar enough to be tied together in your dream state. So maybe that's why your brain voluntarily, actually, no, that would be involuntarily because you didn't make the choice to do that, a conscious choice anyway, to kind of tie them together and experience them together. It's a really good question. I mean, you have a lot of different things and going on in your brain. I mean, like neuroanatomy is like so vast and complicated, and so many people don't even understand it. Understanding how humans experience is hard enough. Like, why do we dream? And why do some people remember their dreams and others not?
So do you think it has something to do with the state of the health of their neurological system?
Well, I'm pretty sure younger people remember their dreams much easier and more often than older people. And I think that's just kind of a responsibility thing in life, in worry and anxiety as you quote unquote grow up. And so people kind of forget about a lot of how to do that, or even like, find it like less important. I think a lot of people dream, they just don't, they forget them.
Oh, kind of like it's not prioritized by their brain. So it's like not as strong of a neural network or like system. Those neural pathways that are reinforced by things that we do regularly aren't as reinforced when you place less importance on dreams.
Yeah. And I think, dreaming doesn't necessarily, or at least remembering your dreams does not necessarily increase your chances of survival. So if you get at a really basic primal level, most people in our sort of competitive world aren't really worried about it. And like, for example, your podcast, you're like probably the only dream podcast. Like nobody really, I mean, you have like followers still like early on, but it's not really like a discussion. Like people don't really worry about it because it's not mandatory for their survival in their everyday life. So it just, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. That's kind of like evolution. Maybe with our high speed lives that we live with, technology and stuff, like I don't know, this thought just kind of actually dawned on me. I never thought of this before, but like I wonder if we'll like evolve to not have dreams anymore.
Oh man, I hope not. I love dreams, but anyway. Okay, so that's kind of like an interesting thing to think about, because we evolved. We have such complex brains and the ability to manipulate our environment. So, do you think there's some kind of a evolutionary utility to dreams, and that's why we can dream?
Well, so I mean, I'm not a neuroscientist, but out of interest, I know this much, that dreaming is really good for you, and everybody pretty much does it. It's just a matter of not remembering it. People remember it, some people don't. Some people are interested in it, most people aren't, because again, it's not a concern to their daily lives. But if you don't sleep, if you don't get into REM sleep, you'll eventually die, and you'll have serious. I mean, people who don't sleep enough have a lot, like over the long haul, like long term. You see, issues, neurological issues later in life, like Alzheimer's. That's why sleep's so important, and like consistency in your sleep schedule is really important and healthy for your brain. The dreams themselves, though, like what is the evolutionary advantage of that? Man, that's a tough question. Again, one basic thing that I can think of is how you encode memories into your brain via, short-term to long-term memory, for example. Obviously very advantageous for any organism. Sleep does help do that. Sleep helps enhance your memory. Dreaming helps enhance your memory and reinforce those memories. The question is, why do your memories sort of get mixed match while they're in the process of being reinforced while you're dreaming? There could be, and also, when you're sleeping, and even in your daily life, like your brain is constantly pruning old memories. It's your hippocampus, which regulates your short-term conversion of short-term to long-term memory. It's kind of like RAM in a computer. It's the workbench. It's not like all of your memory. It's not the all-encompassing end-all be-all nuclei of your brain concerning memory, but it's the workstation of it and how much you can work with at any given point in time. So there's a constant pruning, and it's one of the few areas of your brain that that throughout your life there is neurogenesis. A lot of other parts of your brain don't really see a whole lot of neurogenesis unless it's damaged. But like the neurogenesis meaning, the creation of new neurons, new cells. You do see that in the hippocampus. So there's a lot of like memories being created, reinforced, established into, what scientists would call like engrams, which are kind of a theoretical idea, but it's, for our purposes, are encoded sequences of information into webs of and nodes of neurons connecting from various parts of your brain, like the hippocampus to your cortex, and allowing you to think about things or do things or react to things in a particular way as it was reinforced from previous experiences to that stimulus. And so one thing would be like art. You're an artist, so you weren't always an artist, but over time, lots of practice, trial and error, now you could probably paint a cloud without even thinking about it. So it's now kind of like in your subconscious, arguably. So the best thing I can think of right now is like, why do we dream? Well, that's one thing to help that process. But also I think it's a pruning process too, like getting rid of old memories. And through that process, there can be commingling experiences while you're asleep, such as like what we were talking about with the ham sandwich in the slip and slide at the water park.
Okay. Well, yeah, that was a very thorough explanation, very science-based. I like it. So, following that logic, would you do you have any idea or theory as to why one might lucid dream and how that might be advantageous from an evolutionary perspective?
So, I guess in Hinduism, they have this kind of like evolutionary theory that predates, I guess Darwin in a lot of ways, and like Anaximander in ancient Greece, where you have these different manifestations of Vishnu, and I think the earliest manifestation was actually a fish, and then later like land animals and birds, and then higher order apes, and then humans, and then the last stage of evolution was the Buddha. And in Zen Buddhism, lucid dreaming is the highest form of enlightenment. So I guess in that Eastern philosophical context, lucid dreaming is the latest stage of higher order thinking, because now you're not only dreaming, you're conscious while you're in your dreams, and you can control your dreams, and you can create things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, and that can definitely lead to sort of various things like divine inspiration or higher order of creative thinking, creating or dawning the ideas of technological advancement or anything like medicine or engineer or even art. I mean, I think of someone like Tesla, for example. I haven't actually read about it, but maybe he got a lot of his ideas from his dreams. I mean, where else does something like that come from?
Or Descartes. Descartes had a series of dreams that inspired him in his theories and advancing science.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's a good example. So that would be like an evolutionary advantage of lucid dreaming that humans obviously do. Where and why does that come out of basically like nowhere? Well, I mean, at very least, it's a natural byproduct of evolution, of animal life, from cells to jellyfish to fish to amphibians and lizards to mammals to apes to humans. It's just getting more complex and more adaptable and more advanced. And I mean, technology and ideas and advancing scientifically is just like the next stage of evolution, where we're not just like living symbiotically with the planet. We're sort of mastering it and bending it to our physiology for, I don't know, well, our comfort, our enhancing our ability to procreate. I mean, we've had an explosion of the population. I mean, 10,000 years ago, there were not 7 billion people on the planet. Like advancements of agriculture, etc. Like however many years ago, I mean, the earliest humans, I mean, maybe lived in tribes of like a few hundred people. Now we have cities that are like a few 100,000 people.
Like, would you maybe say that, like, ascribe some of that advancement, if not all of it, to humans developing the ability for abstract thought and being able to maybe like calculate things better? Like, say, like, because you hunter-gatherer, you're just hunting and you're like, okay, this is what I get. But then you become a little more conscious of your environment, and then you end up realizing that you have the ability to manipulate the environment to get what you want out of it. So do you think in the same way, lucid dreaming might have an advantage to, like, okay, well, we do all of these things to learn and improve our thought process. You're building those neural pathways when you're studying, but then you develop the ability to lucid dream, which can potentially give you the ability, because like there's no buffer when you're in the lucid dream. There's no buffer, like in the reality that we live in. You're right there with your thoughts, immediately within your thoughts, so you can kind of like extrapolate different ideas and have like different things represent them and manipulate them to kind of like, it's like a very high form of abstract thought which can help you gain a better understanding of the world. Or you could just use it for pure entertainment, because lucid dreaming is extremely entertaining. But either way, like, do you think that there's like something like that? Like, the more conscious we become, the more capable we seem to become. Like, consciousness seems to have some type of a survival advantage.
Yeah. So, well, one thing that I thought is, there's a lot there. So a few things. One, I'm just kind of wondering if somebody out there would do a study on, like, quote unquote, the great thinkers of our time, and ask them, hey, how much of your inspiration in developing your, ideas and theories came from lucid dreaming or dreaming in general, and just kind of getting you might have some people who say, oh, like a great thinker who's very famous would be Mikao Kaku. I wonder if you talk to him, say, hey, what do you think about dreaming? He might go either way. I mean, I don't know. Like, maybe he says, yeah, I dream all the time and blah, blah, blah. Or you also might say, I never dream. I don't remember my dreams. So I guess it's a hit or miss. It might do something for some people and it might not for others. But going back to like what we were talking about before, like how we're evolving, I wonder how consciousness has evolved overall in the human population, because arguably consciousness comes from immediate and direct awareness about your surroundings. And I feel like arguably humans have kind of, at least in like East or Western societies where things are very comfortable, maybe our consciousness is kind of going down because things are very, very comfortable for us, progressively getting more and more comfortable and easy. Life's becoming much more easy. Whereas a hunter-gatherer 50,000 years ago, even though they're not technically as intelligent as us in terms of like understanding of science, their consciousness may have been incredibly high because they're exposed to the elements constantly. So I don't know. It's an interesting thought. Consciousness doesn't necessarily have a direct correlation to intelligence, although it must, because you have to be conscious about things and be aware about things that other people don't see in order to develop a new technology or science or theory or whatever. But I oftentimes think that the greatest invention ever made, in my opinion, was not actually fire or the wheel or even the rocket ship. I mean, those are incredible things for sure. But the sort of like unsung hero of technological advancement, in my opinion, was always the fishing net. Because who in their right mind, and we're talking about a caveman or cavewoman, I mean, figuring out how to weave string was hard enough. But then they somehow dawned the thought of, oh, I can weave this into a mesh and then put it in the water and then catch fish with it. Literally changed the face of humanity. Early civilization was based on fishing. I mean, based on bone protein analysis, the proteins did not come from, hunting red meat animals that produce red meat. It was predominantly fishing protein, and you see that a lot. These fishing communities. So the fishing net really, really changed early civilization. And thinking about the fishing net, it's comparable to, Einstein's theory of relativity in the sort of like space-time continuum, which is expressed in this sort of like web, this net. And I can only think about, the fishing net, which was just equivalent or comparable at this time, tens of thousands of years ago. The only thing I can think of is that kind of creative thought. Probably, if I was a hunter-gatherer and I didn't know anything, didn't even have like complex language, not even an alphabet. The only thing I could think of is maybe they got the idea from looking at a spider's web and then thought, I wonder if I wove this into a... But see, that kind of creative thought is synthetic thinking. Creative thought, taking an idea from something else and then bringing it together. That's kind of like what your dreams do. And then seeing what you get out of it. Yeah, I mean, they're very similar processes, but again, I don't know because I've never, nor do I know anyone who's ever done a study on the relationship between genius and lucid dreaming. I wonder, like, maybe we should start doing that. Like, go and talk to all the brightest minds in the world and see at what rate, or percentage of those brilliant minds lucid dream or dream at all compared to those who don't.
Okay. Yeah, something to think about. That may be a good endeavor to pursue. Okay. So, yeah, that's a lot to cover there. So you think that it may, basically, from the sound of it, is that there may be some type of a creative advantage, and then a higher thought processes that help figure out things, which obviously humans are very creative creatures. We manage to figure out solutions to complex problems with abstract thinking, and dreaming and lucid dreaming are arguably all abstract thinking. So let me ask you this then. Have you ever had a dream that felt like it lasted years?
Yeah. That can I don't have that often. But if you did, yeah, I mean, I could see how that would be an advantage because you could spend a lot of time in the dream world figuring something out and planning something. I could see how that would be an advantage because the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is that it doesn't obey the laws of physics. You're not bound by the laws of physics. But if you can kind of brainstorm in that realm and figure out how to utilize, this opportunity to creatively think and put things together that don't normally go together, and then upon waking, try to figure out, okay, how can I make that idea work and happen, bound by the laws of physics that we live in our waking life. That's definitely an advantage, and that's definitely a time thing. I mean, it's kind of like the advantage that you would have, if this isn't possible, but if you traveled the speed of light for a year and you came back to Earth, like everyone would age 7 years, you would have only aged 1 year. Well, that's a time advantage. You could have done a lot, got a lot done, whereas everybody else is in overall the same amount of time. You were away from each other at the same amount of time, but they aged more. Using that idea in the dream world while you're lucid dreaming, you're only asleep or you're only in REM sleep for however long, maybe like an hour or maybe minutes. But if you have that time that could feel for like forever, and you mastered lucid dreaming and were able to basically pull anything out of your mind on command and build something, yeah, that would be an absolute evolutionary advantage. But again, I wonder what percentage of people, who are the makers and shakers of, human society, who make the sciences work. I wonder what percentage of them do that.
Okay. Well, a lot of practical, kind of like utilitarian point of view there for lucid dreaming, which is nice. It's kind of refreshing to hear that. So, do you think, okay, now I don't know if this is something that you've talked or thought about before, but so when you're dreaming, like for example, you can have the exact same experience as you and I sitting here talking right now. And when you're dreaming, you can pick up a sandwich in your dream and eat it, and it smells, tastes, feels like everything is like the exact same experience as eating a sandwich. Now, the interesting thought is you are that sandwich that you're eating because you're the one dreaming of it. You are the entire environment, right? So the question would be like, where does consciousness actually lie? It's like you're everything in that moment. Everything that you're experiencing is you, and you're kind of orchestrating everything as you're experiencing it. So the question, I guess, would be where would consciousness be located, if that's even possible to facilitate?
Well, certain parts of the brain shut down when you're asleep, and then others are kind of awake. So I think I would start there, like thinking about, well, in a physical sense, okay. I mean, we can kind of figure out, and you can look up, which parts of your brain are awake and asleep. But in a metaphysical sense, sort of like outside of okay, because we can pinpoint which nuclei does what pretty much. But yeah, when whatever's going on in your lucid dream, my thought is how exactly I would be trying to find, like, how to isolate that particular thought to which groupings of neurons and firings of those neurons. But it's kind of like, I don't know, using a weird analogy, like music. If I could equate musical notes to neurons, which are the actual physical, tangible thing. If you just look at a neuron, or if you look at a note, okay, it doesn't really mean anything.
Right, yeah.
But once it's actually manifesting itself, say music, in the context of being used as a musical expression, that's a whole nother thing. So then you can hear it in what it's supposed to be used for, but then there's something beyond that, just like the neuron. I mean, you can experience what the neuron's firing if you somehow had like that kind of electrode that was hooked up to some hyper-tech nanotechnology screen that could project what, visual experience the neuron was triggering. Beyond that, there's the feeling and the emotions associated with it. Going back to the musical note, you can see the note, you can hear the note, but then there's the feeling it gives you. I mean, even that, you could isolate that to the limbic system in the brain, which triggers emotional responses, and associates emotional responses, fear, love, to experiences and memories. So, that is definitely an evolutionary advantage of higher order mammals compared to reptiles. Although they still have it, but it's much more pronounced in mammals, where, for example, mammals are more likely to be K-selected reproducers, where they have fewer offspring, but instill more resources into those fewer offspring. Whereas reptiles and things like fish, they're R-selected. They have more offspring, as much as they can have. The majority of them die, and it's sort of like reproduction by attrition. Although many mammals are R-selected reproducers, but the majority of K-selected reproducers are more likely to be mammals and higher order apes, like humans, for example. And it does increase the chances of survival.
And so emotions play a key role in that.
Yeah. So if you look at like most animals, they mate doggy style. And however, apes do something very different. They mate face to face. And what we know is that when you mate face to face, you can look in the person's eyes. You can kiss them. You can, like, their facial print is imprinted into your mind. So you can associate those emotional feelings with this particular person. And that's where you see a lot more frequency of pair bonding. That's why there's a lot more frequency of pair bonding in higher order animals like that. And when these animals give birth to their young, yeah, they have like these emotional connections to their offspring and to the father. You see this in birds too. There are birds that do. There's a lot of animals who are more likely to be K-selected reproducers. You can find it technically in any species given the right environment. But typically most animals, unfortunately, live in very stressful, volatile environments where there's high level of lack of resources. So their only chance of spreading their genes is to reproduce as much as they possibly can. Hence, be an R-selected reproducer. But ideally, most species would want to be K-selected. Yeah, you can see that where environments are a little bit more stable. So, in any case, yeah, the emotional connection, going back to what we were talking about with neurons and musical notes, like using an analogy to compare the two, they're just an experience, but associating the emotions to them is a whole nother level. And, you were asking, where does that ham sandwich come from? I mean, that you could say would be a process of reinforcement of, oh, ham sandwiches are good. This not only tastes good, it enhances my chances of survival. Because if I ever see another ham sandwich, I'm going to go eat it, because it's going to increase my fecundity, my ability, to survive, and increase my chances of producing offspring. And hey, by the way, here's an emotional response connected to it. That makes things so much more powerful. And so, yeah, those are all evolutionary processes that, well, that's why mammals are, the top dog of the food chain. Why part of the reason why humans have become so successful, because, we're more likely to have all those things going for us. Dreams are, yeah, definitely a byproduct of all of that. And they definitely help enhance people's memory, for sure. That's absolutely proven. They definitely help people, and people who are in tune so much to have the ability to lucid dream can definitely take it to the next level. So it would definitely be, an evolutionary advantage. And, I think like what we're talking about with the Zen Buddhists, I mean, they figured it out way back then. I mean, it's the highest form of enlightenment. And what's more enlightened than increasing your ability to survive in this world and, enhance your own progeny and I guess just be a good person.
Yeah, well said. I mean, so like I often think about it like lucid dreaming, it seems to be like a different state of consciousness. Like you can be unconscious, like let's say you're knocked out or you're asleep or something, which is dangerous to your survival. Like there seems to be a correlation between the more conscious you are, the better your chances of surviving. But like let's say you're drugged, or you're drunk or something, like you can be semi-conscious or unconscious. Those are not good states to be in terms of survival. And then you can be conscious, like you're awake, aware, okay, I can defend myself or take care of myself, I'm conscious. But then you get to the, like the modern man has the ability to have the abstract thoughts, which is like not just being aware, but being self-aware. Like you're aware of your own awareness. And then you can be much more mindful in the way that you move about the world. Like society, you have different people and they're always telling you like, don't do this, do that. And you can kind of figure out your own place and increase your chances of survival. And then you also have like animals don't have art, for example. Humans do have art because we have the higher thinking capabilities, of abstract thought and being able to, like you said, express emotions and kind of relate those emotions to one another, which can create a stronger cultural bond, which kind of like propels people, it makes you want to aim to do better and like move forward. But the other thing about lucid dreaming, which I think, is probably what most people get, and the reason for it is basically to indulge in whatever desires you might have, because it's really powerful to be able to lucid dream. I know when I was much younger, that's the first thing I thought about lucid dreaming is like, oh, I can have anything I want, really? You know what I'm talking about. Young boys, you know what I'm talking about. But so it's basically, and it's not, I mean, like, it's kind of funny because, that's what most people use it for. Like I'm allergic to a lot of things, for example, but I can eat anything I want as much as I want in a lucid dream. And it's weird because it's kind of satiating. It's kind of like it puts out that desire. It's like, oh, I've had all of this. kind of bored with it. I don't need it anymore. So it's like the same thing with like, if you want to have like different kind of like sexual encounters without any risk, lucid dreaming would be what I would recommend to people. And it's also it's interesting because you get to a point where like, of like doing all these different things and you're like, oh, okay, well, this is kind of stupid. I'm kind of tired of it. So then you actually start to get to the real good stuff, like, oh, let me fly into outer space, explore other planets, talk to aliens, like have superpowers, experience different states of consciousness. Like lucid dreaming is so unlimited, but I think like sometimes it's almost like people can get out there, like almost like that, what you were talking about, like that primal aspect of who they are. It's almost like they can satiate that and then move on into higher thinking. So I think there is a lot of utility into lucid dreaming that's hugely undermined. But the next question that I wanted to ask you is, if you've had dreams that felt more real than this reality that we're experiencing right now.
Well, one thing I do want to say though is I feel like in a lot of ways, and it's kind of funny, we're kind of suppressing our ability to lucid dream. Like life is becoming progressively easier for more and more people, and so the ability to lucid dream as time goes on should be more accessible. As like podcasts like this, like try to reach people and talk about it, and people can have it like a place to go, where they're not just by themselves and think, oh, I don't know what that was, or this isn't even a thing. There's so much potentiality in it to do all those things that you were talking about. I mean, you could satisfy all your possible hopes, dreams, and desires, and then realize like, oh, well, maybe it doesn't really make me happy. What does? What else can I explore in this dream world? But I wonder why, side note, so we do so many things, so many people do so many things to suppress, this creative thought in their consciousness. I mean, so many people drink, alcohol to excess to forget. I mean, when you're drunk, then you forget, and you go, oh, I don't remember what happened. Like we're doing a lot of things to forget, like even drug abuse. Like we do things to forget. I feel that, a lot of people do that, they're trying to forget the past. It's not necessarily the healthiest way of dealing with those emotions. But yeah, we have this potentiality, we have so many opportunities, especially in America. And we're kind of like suppressing that potentiality. And I think exploring the ability to do quite literally anything via our lucid dreaming could really take us to the next level. So like creating a sense of coherency within the lucid dreaming world and talking about it and seeing what humanity can do with it. Because again, there's the time element, go into your dream. You could spend a year in your dream, blueprinting something, and it can be more real. Like you were asking me, have I ever had a dream that was more real? Yeah. I mean, I think we've had dreams where, you've had a dream where you were like in pain and it felt really real. Like, sometimes I wonder, it gets like into my memories and then I don't know what's real and what's not. And wait, was that, because I'll go talk to somebody and say, hey, you remember when that happened? And then they'll be like, we never had that conversation. So I'm like, oh, what the heck am I even talking about? Maybe I dreamed it, sort of dissolving the lines of demarcation between reality and the dream world. What is that going to do? Geez, I don't even know. But it's something to think about. Then you can debate philosophically, what is real? I mean, more or less, we've created this hard line between reality and dream world. And most people are, they're just dreams, whatever. They don't remember them. They don't care. Doesn't enhance our survivability. Maybe one day it will be, because, obviously in the evolution of life on Earth, going back to Hindu theology, there's definitely a strong consideration, even in Buddhism, in many other religions, that religion or dreaming, lucid dreaming, is a high level of consciousness. Like, to be conscious in your dream, that's hard. It's hard to train. Most of the time when I lucid dream personally, I just let it happen. If it happens, it happens. And I enjoy that aspect of it because it's like surprising. It surprises me. But I mean, I've had all those kinds of dreams, traveling through space, dimension, talking to God, which felt really real. I mean, I levitated out of my bed and every tissue in my body started getting ripped apart down to the molecule, down to the atom, and every atom was ripped apart and blown up, and I just became a part of this light. It was the most painful dream I've ever had, very painful. And I talked to God. I mean, it's a dream. So I've had religious dreams like that. I had one dream where I was actually Satan, and I had the ability to travel from one end of the universe to the other in a split second, and I did. And I traveled all around the universe, and it was so much fun because that's like my dream, to like explore the universe. It's so big and vast, and all the various geographies and climates of all the different planets and everything, and the nebula is so beautiful, lights, crazy. But I was somehow misunderstood because my dream ended with the army trying to like kill me and shoot missiles at me, and I was hitting him like baseballs with my war hammer, and then I woke up. But yeah, it was an interesting dream. But yeah, I mean, having consciousness in your dream, it does transfer over. It absolutely does transfer over into your waking life. Because if you can be conscious in your dream life, you're going to be a lot more conscious in your waking life. Now that's enhanced. Absolute survival advantage. Because a lot of people, they kind of just go with whatever powers it be control them and direct them into via the media.
Well, I agree. So yeah, I remember you telling me about the Satan dream. That was a pretty cool one. And I agree. So like a lot of people, I mean, that can also be like a survival, like it may be better to just go with the flow as opposed to like going against the grain. That's also maybe a survival thing. But something important to consider, like what you just said with, that's the interesting part is I often, like sometimes when I lucid dream, like I have like a specific thing that I want to do, like fly or turn Super Saiyan or whatever. But like oftentimes when I lucid dream, I just want to see where my subconscious takes me. Like where is this dream going? And it's interesting because you can analyze the dream on the go, like in the moment, and you can be like, oh, that's why this is happening. Or like, I've thought about this, like this affected me this way. That's why I'm dreaming this. So yeah, you have more of a control and you can analyze your own thoughts, which is a powerful thing. But you're just kind of going with the flow. Like you're conscious, but you're just going with it. Like you're just curious to see where it goes. And I think there's plenty of people like that, they're aware. It's kind of like, okay, well, this is my life. This is what I'm doing. It's not a bad life, especially in America. Most people have a good life, comparatively speaking. So it's like, it's possible that they just want to see where it goes or, what happens. And even if they are like, quote unquote, asleep, and they're just going through the motion, that's also fine. There's nothing wrong with that. I guess it depends on the perspective. But I think what you said about like, exploring different worlds and having all these experiences, there is an evolutionary advantage, I would say, and also how it affects us because, you can have a dream and you can be like, what was it? A couple of like this is maybe like 10 episodes ago, we talked about how dreams have shifted the course of history. Like, for example, Descartes, like he had his dreams that impacted him and which ended up resonating throughout the world. And then you have, I think it was, God, I'm gonna say this wrong, or it may be the wrong person, but I'm pretty sure it was Dmitry Mendeleev, maybe, that developed the periodic table. And yeah, he dreamt it. Yeah, he dreamt it. But I mean, like, obviously it could be a situation where like, you're working on a problem while you're awake and you're thinking of all these different things, and then you can get kind of tunnel visioned. But then like when you're dreaming, it's a completely different state of being it's almost like, taking psychedelics like mushrooms or LSD. A lot of people say that they feel a lot better, like at peace after doing those things. It may have something to do with the fact that you get a chance to think differently, or you rest. It's kind of like if you're always doing the same exercise, it's actually counterproductive as opposed to like switching it up and resting is also important. But lucid dreaming can just simply provide you a different mode of thinking, which could potentially give you the answer. It's like sometimes you just need to look at things from a different angle to get the answer, which is also, like hugely beneficial in terms of survival and evolution. But okay, well, I think we've discussed a lot. We've touched a lot on like a lot of good topics. You made a lot of good points. But one of the things that I know that our listeners come to the podcast for is dream stories. So that story that you shared about being Satan was a very interesting one. What other, like, let's see, what other dream stories do you want to share? Like, is there a dream story that you want to maybe go over that our listeners might enjoy hearing?
Kind of, I guess, like, because you made a good point, and it's making me think about, because I've noticed I used to dream and lucid dream a lot in my early mid-20s, and progressively I haven't done it as much. I still dream, but I don't lucid dream as much, because you grow up and you work, quote unquote grow up, but it's an interesting thought about, now reflecting on myself, having lucid dreamed a lot in my life, and not doing as much as I used to, because there isn't an immediate, at least being conscious of it, there isn't an immediate advantage to that in my life. I work and I do that. It's not necessarily advantage to my job, because I know how to do my job really well. And I just do it. I just go and I do it. And it's like sort of natural at this point. And, I wonder if I could ever get back to that. I don't know.
Yeah, you could.
So, but dreams, I guess I had a lot of religious themed dreams, talking to different beings, not necessarily God, but maybe godlike beings. One time I played the greatest chess player in the universe, and this being was absolutely massive. And he kind of looked like the alien plant from Little Shop of Horrors, okay, I think, but it was massive. I mean, it was like the size of a planet. And I was playing him, and I don't remember now what he said to me. He said something really profound, and I woke up and I'm like, whoa, that's cool. And I mean, you know me, I play chess a lot, so it was cool. I've had dreams where Jesus spoke to me, but I've also had dreams where, that wasn't the only Satan dream. That I guess, I mean, I grew up Catholic, so I have like a lot of religiously themed dreams, but I also have a lot of dreams that are themed based on my fears. I have a lot of tornado dreams and city dreams and exploring cities and but also exploring like off-world planets. One lucid dream I had, I was in Publix, and I'm not trying to advertise for Publix, by the way, but I that's where I was, and I had a paintbrush in my hand, and I turned where I was into outer space. And I used my paintbrush and I started painting planets and stars, and I made, in this lucid dream, a solar system. And that was really cool. Yeah, that was a good one. But being sort of like an architect, I have dreams like that a lot, like exploring different parts of the cityscape, seeing these sort of like machine buildings that are kind of like transformers, seeing lots of tornadoes, sort of, I don't know if it has something to do with maybe the emotional chaos in my life or something. I don't know, the dream symbology, and in the space dreams of going to different planets and seeing, one dream I had, I went to a planet that was very similar. The people, or the aliens there, were very similar looking, not exactly, but similar looking to the aliens in the book series Animorphs, where they were, I lost my train of thought. What's that what's that man horse where it's like a horse body, but like the upper half is a man. They looked like that, but they were completely hairless and they were like light purple. And that was interesting. I had one dream where I actually worked for NASA, and we got the coordinates wrong, and the satellite crashed into the space station, and we were all freaking. I woke up and I was highly emotionally. I was still disturbed. Like I woke up and I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe this happened! I can't believe this happened!" I was like, I knew it was a dream, but that emotional response really triggered. Wow, like this is a big deal. But I guess in a particular dream that I can remember. Oh, yes. But that was something that happened a lot. That wasn't just a one and done dream. I had this weird dream ever since even when I had my first back surgery. This was, I don't know if it was the meds they had me on in combination with the fact that I was already kind of like able to lucid dream. I woke up and I was in multiple different places at the same time. Like if I don't know what insect has like eyes, like multiple eyes looking in different directions. That's what it looked like. But my eyes moved in the direction in which chess pieces on a board moved, which sounds really weird, but that was my perception waking up from the drugs that I was on in the hospital. I was like, oh my God, this is like crazy. I was in the hospital room, seeing multiple different angles of the room. I could even see myself actually. And, yeah, I would have dreams where I was hooked up to something like in the Matrix, like something was stuck into my brain in the back of my head. And I couldn't move. I had sleep paralysis. Those particular dreams were paired with sleep paralysis where I couldn't move. And yeah, I was either being operated on or like examined, or I was trying to wake up, but I couldn't because I was hooked up to this machine. Some kind of, I remember whenever I had those dreams, I always woke up really refreshed, like very deep sleep, like almost the dream was basically in it was like recharging my battery or something. I don't know. I was plugged up to whatever. And, yeah, I woke up really, really refreshed. So I guess those are all kinds of themes that I had in my dreams. And, others are just sort of like I know like creatures when I'm exploring the city or battling creatures, like big creatures. I can think back, I don't know, like cities that are kind of like very advanced, but they're covered in plants and moss, so they're old. They've been there for a long time. And then there's some great beast that I'm battling, like great dragon or something. And then there's tribes that I go to. Maybe I play a lot of video games or something. I don't know. And so they're all kind of blending together in my dream world. So they're super rad. Super rad. And I would like to go back. I wish I did it more, but again, in my waking life, I'm like an adult now, and I go to work, and it doesn't necessarily enhance my survival, unless of course I used it for some kind of productive, financially productive means in society. I don't know how it would do that. I don't know how anyone would do that. There's obviously some people who do that. I mean, I don't know what Descartes, I'm assuming, was like really wealthy, probably. So, I don't know. I guess I haven't figured that out yet, but where do you go from there?
Well, I will say this. Like, just keeping a dream journal, like, it doesn't cost anything. Like, you're still sleeping the same amount of time. But, so what I often do is, because, like, I still have, like, my regular job and, like, all my chores and, like, that boring adult life. Well, what I'll end up doing is I'll sleep for, like, sometimes, not all the time, but, like, maybe 3 or 4 times a month. I'll sleep for 4 hours, and then I'll wake up for 2 hours, and then I'll go back to bed for, 90 minutes. And then in that 90 minutes, at some point I'll become lucid and have a lucid dream. So like usually what I'll do is like I'll sleep for 4 hours, I'll wake up, and then I'll go into my office and then just like paint or draw or work on a project or whatever. So like you can still be productive with that time. It's just like it's just how you split the time up. But if you don't want to lucid dream, because it can be it's like it takes time, obviously. You can just just keep a dream journal or just sketch them down, or you could just record yourself. A lot of people that I know actually just record their like as soon as they wake up, they'll just record what they remember onto their phone. That way they have it for later reference. But yeah, because I remember we've had many discussions on dreams, and you have some crazy dreams. I mean, I don't know, like you said, sometimes people can kind of like move away from it, and sometimes they dream more. But I do think it's very just like it's like a cultural phenomena. So like you're an anthropologist or anthropology major, about ancient Egypt to an extent, I assume. Like it was commonplace for ancient Egyptians to have dream journals and talk about their dreams and talk about them to the priests. It's like their culture respected and kind of shared dreams with one another, to the point where I forget the name of the king. We did a podcast on him a while ago, but there was a king that, because he had dreamt that he had become the pharaoh, he told the pharaoh that was in power at that time, and eventually like that was like a very important thing to them. To eventually he became the pharaoh. So, and it's like, it's kind of BS, because like if I told you like, oh, I dreamt I'm going to be the next president, it's like, okay, nice kid, whatever. But it's like to them it held huge importance. So it's like I don't think that dreams like should be taken like that seriously to that extent, just because you can have somebody coming along that's clearly lying. There is definitely something to be said about, like, for example, me and my fiance, we share our dreams with one another. Like sometimes it's nice to just sit down and put away all the electronics or TV or whatever and just talk to another person and just have like that connection. Our lives are getting perpetually busier, but dreams have their place, and we've evolved to have them for a reason. They're not to be ignored. But I do like everything that you have to say. Clearly, you've thought about them. So we're a little bit over an hour here into the recording, so we'll go ahead and we'll wrap it up. But before doing that, do you have any closing thoughts or statements that you'd want to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I guess branching off what you just said, it brings to my mind that, and it's interesting that maybe there was more of a precedence on dreaming. And it's interesting because the ancient Greek philosophers, many of them, maybe even most of them, actually went to school in ancient Egypt. And I wonder if there's some kind of cultural influence on Greek, the sort of the oracles that they had or whatnot. Like how did that influence them? Because obviously you're talking about something that enhances creative thinking for sure. And but more or less we've kind of lost. I mean, we don't have it in the education system. We don't have it in the modern medical. It's not really considered, other than, oh, well, sleep's important, but nobody really talks about lucid dreaming. You don't go to there's no doctor you go to consider, hey, did you have your lucid dream recently? I mean, it's not a part of our fabric of our society. Ancient societies did. And maybe that whoever it was who figured out to weave, plants together into a fishing net, maybe that's how they got that idea. I don't know. But I think there's definitely potential in it based on everything we've talked about today. And maybe we should consider it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And if any of you have any dreams that you'd like to share, you're always welcome to do so at contact@letsdreampodcast.com. And again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.